Hello Capsuleers. In today's video, let's focus on the most common way to travel in New Eden. Warping. Contrary to your intuition, when you warp from one spot to another in space, your movement is actually teleporting through a series of discontinuous coordinates. The trajectory varies with your warp speed. You are not invincible while warping. You can be killed by weapons that don't require locking, such as smart bombs, auto-targeting missiles, doomsday weapons, etc. For example, gankers can sit near the Stargate, using smart bombs to kill small ships before they reach the Stargate, or even kill you in the middle of the warp. The simplest way to counter smart bomb ganking is not to warp gate to gate directly when you are piloting a fragile ship in low-sec or null-sec space. You should warp to a random object in space first, then warp to your destination. We call this flip warping. This traveling method also helps you avoid bubble camping. When you warp to a spot in space, there will be a 2,000-meter deviation from the destination. This is why people lose their hauling ships in the trade hub while docking. You will be notified that your docking request is accepted when your ship is within 2,500 meters from the station, but the ship only docks when your ship is within 500 meters or closer. In the few seconds you are approaching the space station, you might be forcibly killed by high-sec gankers. To avoid being ganked while docking, you need an instant dock bookmark or a tanky ship. You must use an instant docking bookmark while docking when you are transporting expensive assets with a fragile ship. Otherwise, you will end up losing everything you are carrying. Remember, warping to 0 kilometers does not always let you instantly dock at the station after landing. Different ships have different align times before starting to warp. The bigger your ship, the longer it takes. However, there is a way to speed up the align time by using an afterburner. We call this slingshot warping. The method is simple. Warp first, then activate and deactivate the afterburner. The ship will start warping instantly once the afterburner is deactivated because the ship reaches its current max speed. The shorter the afterburner duration, the faster the ship starts warping. In this case, leveling up the afterburner skill will significantly speed up the slingshot time. Remember, slingshot warping does not apply to agile ships that have short align times. Activating the afterburner only makes them align slower. Most ships have 0 warp core strength points. Blockade runners have 2 points, and Titans have even more. The warp core stabilizer gives 2 extra stabilize points during activation, but you can only fit 1 stabilizer per ship. When warp core strength points drop below 0, the ship is disabled from warping, jumping, micro warp drives, and micro jump drives. On the other hand, gankers can equip multiple warp scramble modules on their ships to stop you from warping. Therefore, a warp core stabilizer is a must-have for traveling, but it won't save you if you are caught in a ganking group. Warp disruption field, aka bubble, can only be generated by modules and deployable structures in null-sec systems. Ships are unable to warp while inside it. Interdiction nullifiers allow players to ignore the bubble effect. You will be able to warp away once your warp process has started, and you can still warp away even if the module cycle ends before you begin warping. A bubble also changes a ship's landing position when a bubble is within 500 kilometers of your warping path. The ship will be stopped from warping and dragged to the edge of the bubble. This means using a nullifier during warping doesn't change your landing position. Bubbles on your warping path that disappear or launch during your warping progress do not change the ship's landing spot either. In other words, your landing spot is determined the moment you start the warp. Anything that happens on your warping path or anything you do during warping will not make a change. So, what can you do when you find yourself trapped inside a bubble after jumping through a Stargate? Your first choice is to overload your afterburner or micro warp drives and jump back to where you were. If you are afraid you can't tank the damage on the way back to the Stargate, you can try a second way, which is a bit trickier. You need to have an afterburner, cloaking device, and nullifier all installed. First, align your ship to a random object in space, then activate the afterburner and cloaking device at the same time. When the afterburner is almost at the end of its cycle, activate the nullifier, do cloak, and hit warp. If everything goes well, you will warp out of the bubble instantly once the afterburner is deactivated. This is advanced slingshot warping. It takes some practice, but it will save your ship once you've learned it. However, there is a chance you could get decloaked by a fast-speed frigate pilot, or get bumped away before warping. Even if you know all the tricks and can perform them perfectly, there is always a chance of being killed if you are unlucky. For example, you find an interceptor next to you after you jump through the Stargate and find yourself inside a bubble with 10 other hostiles. So, avoiding danger is more important than mastering any skill. A scout alt traveling one jump ahead of you while traveling with expensive assets can save you a huge amount of trouble. You can dock into a station or log off in deep space whenever you feel uncomfortable. Remember, good decisions always outweigh technique. By the way, I almost forgot another important piece of information. When you plan your route, sometimes you will see a system marked lawless. This means the system's security level has been downgraded, turning highsec into lowsec and lowsec into nullsec. This means players can freely attack each other in lawless highsec without Concord intervention, and bubbles can be launched in lawless lowsec systems. You need to pay extra attention when traveling through lawless systems, as the Stargates are most likely camped. Okay, that's it for today's video. I tried to cover more content, but the length of the script exceeded my expectations. In the next video, I hope I can show you some survival tips. If you find my video helpful, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe.